Okay, good afternoon, everyone. This is the Vermont House Committee on Office and Economic Development. It's Friday, January 31st, 2025 at 1:32 in the afternoon. Back to have more discussions on H99. So we have Deputy Commissioner Banking with us. Aaron, thank you for joining us this afternoon. Definitely appreciate your time.
No problem. Thank you for having me, everyone. Good afternoon. Just for the record, Aaron Ferentz, Deputy Commissioner of Banking at DFR. I just prepared just a few quick remarks, but I really hope that you open up to questions, and I'd be prepared to answer those for you. But just wanted to say the DFR is committed to ensuring that all Vermonters have access to robust, competitive financial services. And we are not against innovation or new ways of offering that service, but we do like to practice innovation with caution. Earned wage access, while a new-ish service, is something that can have some concerning attributes. I watched the testimony yesterday. I think some people made that clear. And I do want to point out we do share those same concerns, and we've testified in the last session to those when the H87 first came out as well. I think recent proposed CFPB guidance, other actions in other states, as well as existing Vermont law suggest that these are probably loan products of some sort. So we're at maybe a crossroads. I think if the committee decides to move forward with this bill, I would have some recommendations. Generally speaking, I think to use this existing bill, we would need to add some sort of statutory language that says that expedite fees and the tips are included in the finance charge to make sure that is explicit. Some of the other language is really sort of nitpicky and maybe is better for talking with Ledge Counsel, but I could do that for you. There's one comment about it changes the definition of financial institution in our financial privacy section. That gets a little problematic with the way we define financial institution in other ways. So we want them to be covered if they do exist in this way by that statute, but there may be other ways to get about it. And then finally, there was a change to our general licensing statutes in 8 VSA 2102, which actually does have a much larger trickle-down effect. So we do need to work with Ledge Counsel on fixing that particular component of the bill. And just I thought I would also just level set for you about where things are in Vermont right now. There is one company that is an employer integrated earned wage access provider that has already gotten a license in Vermont. They got that in 2024. They don't charge the consumer any fees. So I think they have a card system where they're earning that. You just were talking about swipe fees. They're earning part of the interchange on each transaction. We have also issued a no action letter to an entity that they are also employer integrated, but they are not the ones who are advancing the funds to the consumer. The employer is advancing the funds to the employee. So that, in our opinion, did not meet the requirements to be a loan or have a license with us because it is not sort of the entity's funds. It's the employer's funds that they were going to pay anyway.
Aaron, let's go back to the entity that is licensed. What license do they have?
They are a licensed lender.
Okay.
They're a licensed lender. So they
went that route.
They chose to go that route. We just got the application and acted on it like anyone else. I checked with our consumer services folks. We have not received any complaints about any company or the service in general. I think that's an important aspect for you to understand. So folks are using it. They're using it probably in ways, hopefully, that are good for them. Maybe not. I'm not sure, but it hasn't risen to our level to bring any concerns.
Do you get information from the Attorney General's office, Consumer Assistance Program?
I did not check with them, but generally speaking, if it's a DFR regulated entity, the CAPS program will share that information with us. So we would then follow up with the entity.
Okay.
So those were my prepared remarks. I'm happy to take more questions if you'd like.
Do we have knowledge of how many operations there are without license right now currently active in Vermont?
Yeah, I don't know that. That would be really hard data to get. Like I really,
If they don't
generally
have a
speaking, I
license.
can only regulate people that come to me for a license. So
Exactly.
yeah, if you don't have a license, it's hard to really know. So complaints really are how we gather that data. Generally speaking.
Okay.
I was just wondering, like yesterday towards the end of the testimony, there was basically like the conversation we've been having is like that they're unregulated, they're asking to be regulated, but then there was the like they already are regulated under certain activities. So could you kind of go through that a little bit?
I'm trying to think back. I mean, I think
VSA.
in terms of what the activity should be regulated as, you mean?
I think it was like
Licensed lender law, 8 VSA 2234.
Right. So absent this bill, I think it, and again, this has been evolving sort of dynamic in the economy. CFPB just issued guidance last year about it. So it hasn't been at the forefront of our attention. Again, we haven't received any complaints or concerns about it. So I think generally speaking, without this bill, we will be issuing or probably intend to issue some guidance suggesting that it should be covered by our licensed lender statute for a lot of the same reasons that Mr. Walsh testified yesterday too. And then, you know, it would imply Title IX with the usury statutes as well.
Correct. And that's a lot of the conversation is this, thinking about interest, like, and is the concept of interest appropriately applied here? Is APRs of a cap of, was it only like 300 and something percent in California? And is that, are we helping ourselves understand what this process is, or are we looking through a lens that actually doesn't help us understand what this sort of service provides? And it was that chapter 4 on interest that I think we're saying it is not interest. And does DFR have a firm understanding of what? I'd like to hear your thoughts on how interest applies to what this EWA industry provides.
Sure. I think I'm not an attorney, so I don't think I could speak directly to all of the legal requirements of what makes a finance charge a finance charge. But in general, I think if it is tied to the receipt of the actual proceeds of the loan, it should be treated as a finance charge. Like if trying to think of an analogy to use it to explain it, but yeah, I think generally speaking, if you tie it to that, then it is something that should be considered part of the finance charge. So the tip or the expedite fee.
So I want to go back to, you said there's a second company that is somehow, like they're basically they're pulling money from the employer's account, right? And doing it as an advance to the employee. So they're just sort of a helper in that process. So an advance is not a loan.
I might have misspoke. What our no action letter would have told them is that they don't need a lender license in the state of Vermont to do that service because of the fact that it was not their funds that were sent to the employee.
It's the
Employer's funds, exactly.
Because
Yeah, so I missed part of the testimony yesterday, but there was a little bit of, I read, the written testimony of Mr. Walsh. So he was saying, so one thing about he pays, where the consumer actually pays something for this service, either the basic or the additional services. And the other folks that had come in earlier had said, no, the consumer doesn't pay. And maybe this gets at my question for you, which is what aspects, there's a basic service as I understand it, and an additional service. What aspects of each of those transactions would constitute a loan from your perspective as a regulator?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for the vast majority of these transactions, folks are choosing to use the expedite feature. I mean, if you're at the mall trying to buy a new pair of shoes, you need it now. You don't need it in 2 days. So I think that's part of it, exactly. So they are paying it kind of no matter what.
Got it. Thank you.
And you might not be able, I don't know if you could speak to this, but is it your thought that DFR generally would, I guess, is this bill needed? Does it make sense would DFR wants to kind of like get involved with like what we set here, or will DFR just act without this? Like if we didn't do anything, would DFR jump in?
Yeah, if nothing occurs, I think we will need to issue guidance to industry that says, for these reasons, we consider these loans, therefore they're subject to our regulatory authority, all other consumer protect. I'm paraphrasing a lot. It'll be more in depth than this, but yes.
Okay.
So on credit cards, you can get cash advance, right? And you can pay a fee for that. Last time I did a cash advance was like 2 years ago,
Mhm.
but there's an extra fee on it.
Mhm.
Is that, and I don't know what the statute says, but is there an allowed fee? Because that, when you think of what they're doing, it's kind of a cash advance situation. They're not paying for how long there's no interest on how long the money is out there. It's a cash advance thing.
Sure.
So, because they're not charging interest on the funds, they're just, it's a user fee. And we already have cash advance fees, correct?
In Vermont, there's no statutory limit on cash advance fees. I will say that most credit card companies are national banks, and they usually reside in a state that does not have a usury cap, and they are allowed by federal law to export that fact into other states.
Well,
That's why your credit card interest rate could be higher than our internal state usury limits, because they're exporting 36% federal cap. Correct.
I was wondering that yesterday too.
Yeah, me too.
So I believe, and I would have to do more research if you want the definitive answer, but the terms and conditions of the credit card is essentially a loan, would have to be spelled out to you to tell you what those fees are. And that's how that issue is addressed with credit cards.
And I'm just trying to see whether or not we could look at this more, not as a loan situation, but more as a cash advance. Because we're perfectly fine with, well, I mean, I don't know if we're perfectly fine with the fees associated with cash advances, which we're not regulating those. And based on the memory that I have from yesterday, that was kind of what the gentleman was saying, was that this is a loan, and using the donate button is part of the APR, and he was saying it was like 300%, but we don't use that same logic on cash advances for credit cards. Correct? Am I completely off my mind here? I'll step back.
I don't know if I should answer the question first or not, but I just want to make clear that if there was a Vermont bank or a credit union that issued you a credit card and they charged or they granted you a cash advance, we would consider that a loan. I do consider those loans. They're giving you funds from them that you've promised to pay back. You will pay interest on it. There may not be the inclusion of the cash advance fee in the calculation of the APR, but it was previously disclosed in that sort of terms and conditions.
But if they did offer the cash advance, but did not charge a usury fee, I mean, they didn't charge an APR. You don't regulate that currently, the cash advance?
We would consider that a loan like any other transaction, but a bank can offer that to Vermonters because they're a bank. They don't need a special separate license to do that.
But the fee, like if there's like a $10 fee for getting a, $1,000.
There is no limit. That's correct. There is
So-
no on the fee.
So current state with banks that are doing this, if they were to say, yes, we will loan you the money, we're not going to charge you an APR, but you have to pay a $10 fee to get the cash advance. You don't regulate that yet.
Well, I'd have to take a look at the user statutes to really take a look and make sure where that would fit in. There is some 9 VSA 42 is called permitted charges, and that also spells out the types of fees that can be charged in certain forms of credit. Statute is 9 VSA 42.
And that's the one the bank can charge for overdraft fees. Or is that somewhere?
I believe those are going to be generally set by federal laws. All banks and credit unions are also regulated by the federal government as well.
Without state charter?
I cannot think of any state law that limits the amount of fees that you could charge on an overdraft.
So then we rely on the Fed for state chartered banks and credit unions.
Correct. I might be forgetting that it might be a preempted issue where they sort of dictate how we have to treat this.
So am I correct that if we do nothing, then one of these companies could come to you, be regulated as a bank or as a
Licensed lender.
licensed lender, thank you. And then they could provide the service with a limit of 18% APR,
That's
like if we do nothing. All
um,
right.
yeah, I don't want to make sure we get with our legal folks, but generally speaking, I think
Yeah.
that would be appropriate.
I will hold you to the
Yeah.
just general concept.
That's correct.
Thank you.
They wouldn't have to. Like, would they be compelled to do that? Or are we talking about, or is that just
I think the way the mechanism would work is that every time they made it advance, they would have to determine what the APR or the annual percentage rate of the transaction is, factoring in these costs to determine does it comply with that annual 18% statutory rate.
and that is different from the status quo because we're positing that DFR is sort of feeling this is something we need to be talking about. I'm just wondering why isn't that happening now? Maybe that's the question I'm trying to ask.
Yeah, I think part of the issue is that it's been an evolving realm, coupled with the fact that we haven't had any complaints. So it has not been a priority that we've said we should devote our limited resources to this area. Coupled with, we've been hearing that the CFPB was going to issue guidance for a number of years. They finally did last year. Other states have finally started to take some action. So I guess it's dynamic, sort of evolving. It's not like a mortgage, which a lot of that law has been around for 40, 50 years.
I see. Thank you.
I was just gonna say, it would simplify things if we required registration. Correct? Because right now you don't even know who's operating the state.
Very much so.
Or is there registration already required that is not being done to lend money in the state?
There is no other registration that's not being done. It's a matter of I think DFR making the determination and putting out to industry that this activity that you're doing is covered by our licensed lender statute, or you all and us working together to develop this new process, new regulatory regime, however we determine that should work.
So a key difference then under this scenario where we take no action on H99 is DFR would put all these companies on notice and they would be required to come in and get a license pursuant to the licensed lender.
I think
On the books.
we should probably act in that direction. Absolutely.
again, knowing that you need to consult. counsel,
I have a few
to
bosses
be
too,
sure,
yes.
but okay.
Just doing the math on all this stuff, if I'm understanding APRs and things like that. One question I would have is how, we listen to testimony from these companies and they don't have a payback deadline. They can pay it back in 1 week, 2 week, 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 6 months. How could you calculate an APR on that? Even if they charge a $3 fee. And in theory, if someone say borrowed the money and then paid it back 3 or 4 days later, if they had a limit of 18%, they would be able to charge, the charge would be what, 5 cents, 6 cents?
Yeah, there is a really important body of federal law, which I mentioned the CFPB guidance from last year. They said that this activity is subjected to what's called the Truth in Lending Act. And that describes exactly how you calculate the APR. Like I could take out a mortgage today. They would tell me what the cost of the credit is and still pay it off tomorrow. But you sort of have to assume that it's for the life of the term of the loan. So these companies should have a good understanding of when they expect to be repaid and base the APR based on the time that it's outstanding. They apparently will work with you, and if you need to extend that, that's fine. But at the time the loan was made, they're expecting to be paid back in a week or two, depending on your payday. I think that's the real indicator there.
Can I restate or think what you're saying, or in general, in answer to a number of questions? It's not that this particular activity or business model isn't allowed in Vermont. It's just if they would engage in it, they would need to have a license lender law.
Correct.
And so this is your testimony, I'm kind of assuming that the reason that they're coming to us for this particular bill is that there are probably some provisions in the license lender law they would rather not have to comply with. That's not, you don't need to answer that.
Well, I think the key ones are the things that this bill says that they don't have to comply with. Exactly.
Other questions for Amir? So I think, for us, we need to decide on, are you comfortable moving forward with the bill and creating this new product that is in the state right now? Not doing so, there'll probably be some players in that market that won't be in Vermont anymore. That's how we got rid of payday lenders, was making this the requirement for them to become a licensed lender. And a lot of it is on the APR. Or do we find that there is value to consumers in Vermont to be able to get an advance on their wages? I think we all know life happens sometimes, and you could have a sick kid that you need to get a prescription for, and you use the money that you're going to pay your rent with, and now all of a sudden you can't pay your rent, or you if you use the money, or if you have a little bit of money left and you write a check for it or whatever, and it bounces, then you're paying an overdraft fee instead of either no fee or a small fee. So then the other question on the other side is, are people abusing this and they are being harmed? And we're not hearing any evidence of that yet. I think for me, I'd like to understand what we're seeing out there for the jurisdictions that have put regulation, and has that strengthened and changed the way people are using this product? Because they are regulated, we know, they know where they are, that type of thing. So I think that's what we need to think about. We heard from the advocates, and we'll hear more on Tuesday from AARP, and I don't know where they're going or what their thoughts are, but I think we've heard, way out that way, way out this way. Do we bring it in? Or is it a product that we really don't want to see in Vermont?
So I pulled up the VSA, 9 VSA 42. If we were to put this into that section, they're currently not doing credit checks. The way that I understood it, because they don't take social security numbers. According to the statute, it says reasonable cost of credit investigation and appraisal fees. So they could assess that if they wanted to. And then looking down here, it also says reasonable fees associated with credit card agreed upon by the lender and borrower. Current state, what they're doing is that they're offering a free option, but if you want to expedite it, you can pay for it, which reasonable, I mean, you could probably throw that under reasonable fees associated with a credit card. So,
Well, it's really not, some are using a card, but this isn't a credit card.
correct, but what I'm saying is if you guys start regulating them under this section, they could just pivot in that way under this statute. And it doesn't seem like it's a real benefit for individuals to do that, especially if it's a credit card or a credit check. I mean, not depending on your credit, right? You might not be able to qualify for any advance. Am I not making sense as I'm talking? That happens a lot. It's making sense in my mind. Basically, what I'm saying is I think we should actually move forward with the legislation. Because if we don't, we are then forcing the companies to do what's in here. And it actually would cost more to the user going this route than it would what we're currently doing, which is you don't have to pay for it if you don't want to.
To clarify, are you saying that these lenders would then just pivot into becoming a credit product
Or not do business in Vermont.
or just not do business?
But I mean, and if they didn't do business, that doesn't help the individuals that do need that money in advance. And it certainly could cost more going through this part of the regulation. Am I reading that correctly? I mean,
It depends on how you look at it, right? It depends is the answer. It could, it depends.
they have no recourse to,
If they use a credit card product, then yes, right? I defer to our regulator. So.
Yeah, I think I've lost track of exactly what the question is. I will say that Title IX applies to any credit transaction in the state of Vermont that we're able to regulate. I mentioned the national bank issue with a national bank in another state. That's a federal issue we can't do anything about. If you're a bank or a credit union, you have authority from the state to make loans, including credit card loans, to Vermonters. If you're not one of those companies or otherwise exempted by our licensed lender statute, you should get a license from the department to offer those credit services to Vermonters. So we regulate you through the licensed lender statute, not really through Title IX, though licensed lender statute is what implicates the Title IX usury statutes. I just wanted to make sure I level set that.
Similar to what Chair Marcotte said, is I'd be pretty interested to see what the experience of other states has been. There's been some references to how other states have been doing it.
Sure.
So I don't know if you know.
I mean, I'm aware of Connecticut made the same sort of determination that these products are considered loans in Connecticut. So they're subject to their equivalent licensed lender statute. Maryland has done the guidance route where they issued guidance essentially saying similar things. I don't know exactly what the terms are in Maryland. California, I mean, someone testified yesterday to California finally issued some guidance. There is very conflicting information out there from law firms. One of my attorneys tells me about whether or not the caps in California apply to the transactions or not. So that is something to think about. I think the point of the California law was probably to apply caps, but I'm not aware of what they're thinking.
I think you posed the question, well, in terms of, what's the value? And I guess I can see some potential value, for, a consumer. I can also see a potential for, maybe a little bit of abuse in terms of that fee, how much they're going to be charged, for money that they've earned anyway. So I need to think about that a little bit more. I also think, there's maybe a couple of routes, you could go, you talked about, all right, you'd have some proposals to amend this if we use this as a base. The other thing I'm just thinking of, probably not a good way to do things, but you could also take a look at the licensed lender law and say, okay, this is our regulatory regime. Is there anything within the licensed lender law that might be able to address this kind of situation and aware that both provides value and also, prevents abuse, but it's not good to speculate on the end of a Friday, at the end of a week, but that's what I'm thinking right now.
Maybe modernize those license lender statutes.
Well, I don't know about modernize, but is there something unique about this type of transaction or business model that you should take account of in license lender law? I don't know what that would be.
Speak to that a little bit, Herb. One of the things that I thought was interesting in yesterday's conversation was that our final individual, Jeff, he'd spoken about people in vulnerable circumstances, and that's who these products are designed for. One of the people who gave testimony is a Pay Active, is a certified B Corp, and the bulk of the reason that it reaches the threshold of its B Corporation score is that it is serving underserved populations with economic empowerment for the underserved. It's like a massive chunk of what that calculation is. So there's this broad agreement over, yes, who is using the product and what are their alternatives. And that strikes me as just an interest. Like, that was an informative thing to see. I mean, I noticed it when he mentioned being a B Corporation. I wondered how, but it was then later on in the last testimony that we heard someone referring more or less to the circumstances that made that a relevant designation for Pay Active. And it's a bit of a quandary because there seems to be agreement on who uses it, but both coming up with different reasons for what that means as a value judgment.
Under this regulation, they have no recourse to get their money back if they can't get it. Correct? As I'm reading here, it says it's too bad. 4 attempts and you're done.
Yeah.
And I know that, and it doesn't go on our credit, or it doesn't go on your credit.
Right.
But I mean, the risk is definitely far more risky than a credit card, which you can get judgments on. You can send it over to a collection agency, and the collection agency can be terrible to deal with. The more I think about this, I do think we should push this through, or not push it through, but move it forward. So that's where I'm standing.
Aaron, are you able, I don't know if it's like private, are you able to tell us the entities that are the one that's already licensed? And
Sure. The no action company was called FlexWage, and the licensed in the company is called Instant. I believe it's just Instant.
Thanks. Just curious.
That's public information. Okay. Someone asked for more, like, I don't have data because I don't really know exactly what's going on here, but the CFP did issue a study about these activities, how often consumers are using them, are they using more than one provider, really showing you how consumers are using them.
But is it showing like people that have been harmed by using these products? What, I mean, I think for us, is there potential for harm? What is that? And, what's the percentage of people that are being harmed, if any? I mean, I think there's a lot of consumers in Vermont that are utilizing this now. that we have no information of the time. They're not coming to you, or they're not going to the Attorney General's office. I don't know if they're talk to the state's attorney or any law enforcement, but we're not receiving any complaints, and they've been here for a while.
Yeah, I guess the harm issue would have to be, you'd have to look at the study itself, but
I was just gonna say on the issue of harm, I think there is also the embarrassment factor, just the shame factor that can happen when people are in a tough financial situation so that they don't come forward to share this information. So that just might be a data gulf.
So I think if we do go forward with this, the reporting on it is going to be vital. And to understand, right, the repeat users and what kind of supports can be given to them, and even setting, and then going forward, again, if we do, we can set limitations on how people can get more support if they are repeat users, and to get, to understand that, right? So this is that, if we decide this is a benefit to consumers, there are ways that it's not a one and done, right? There's a report in here, it's very vague at the moment, but we can be much more specific about what kind of information we want.
Well, and there's another way to skin the cat. If people are interested in pushing this, going forward with this, we can, ask Aaron to provide the edits that he feels are needed. We can also put a sunset on it so that we stronger reporting. It will come back to this committee in a couple of years, whatever we determine, so that committee can look at it again, determine whether it's a good product for Vermonters or not. And if it is, you can remove the sunset. Or if it isn't, you just let it sunset, and then they would, then I think have to become a licensed hunter. That's another way that you can approach this as well.
And then the third option, which was bandied around a little bit earlier, is to modify, is rather than give them a brand new statute in BSA, in 8 BSA, right, to modernize the lending laws under 9 BSA, and to do this fully different, right? So they're
Modernizing. Take a little more time.
it will.
And if you want, I mean, that could be something, if that's what the department would like to do, would maybe be something we do over the summer. If that's going to be a recommendation that I would look for from the department. Okay.
I was thinking of something, sorry, I was thinking of something, maybe you were talking about title. I was kind of thinking of the current license under statute now. And whether any tweaks to that could be made to accommodate this type of business and this type of value. While avoiding any pitfalls that you see.
right, yeah, that's what I was thinking. If we did say anything, that would be what it was about.
I quote the wrong title.
No, of course not.
It's not.
So one of our witnesses yesterday said at one point, this is the future of payroll, which, or something like that, meaning I think this is sort of just the beginning, I think, of there's more creative ways that people are paid. And so I'm just, the last witness, he also said 90% of people are get paid now. So 90% of the people who are taking the advance are choosing the pay to get it. I mean, I don't know, I'm not sure what the right direction is, but I think there's a lot of consumers I expect who are finding some very significant value to the products. And
I think, along with value, we need to make sure that there is upfront notifications, right? That
Yeah.
get everything spelled out as we require with credit cards.
Yeah.
And then you make your determination of whether you want that now or, and I think what we heard yesterday was that first time that they use it, they want it instant.
Yeah.
And when they, if they follow up again, they're figuring out that they choose their time and know that they could go for 3 days, but so they ask for it in advance
Mhm.
and not pay. So, interesting that people learn really quick when. I don't.
The thing that keeps sticking with me is that unlike a traditional loan situation where like that money is not necessarily yours, this is money that these people have earned. If they had gotten it like during their normal pay period, they wouldn't be paying anything at all for it. Yeah. And so I'm like, I don't know what the solution is there, but I just think that that's like the key flaw in the model is like, I don't know how to get past.
No, it depends on your pay periods.
Right, well, and I think that that's like,
The majority, I think we heard, are either paying every 2 weeks,
right,
or sometimes monthly.
right.
I think the ones that are getting paid weekly are probably in a better spot than.
Most definitely, and I'm like,
Yeah.
to think about pay periods as opposed to.
I just want to go off that, because one of the, in the guidance for CFPB at the end, it was basically saying like that their fourth finding was that moving forward, they were going to engage the US Department of Labor because this seemed like this could be encouraging poor labor practices. So like, I'd also maybe love to hear from Vermont Department of Labor, since I think that was the third like highest thing that we heard that was using Earnin yesterday. So if like the state of Vermont, so if the state of Vermont is encouraging poor labor practices, I'd love to hear that. So,
Yeah, that was the first.
yeah,
Maybe we should get a little more information.
yeah.
I think Matt could get that for us from Ben. I think it was Ben that talked about state of Vermont was one of the users.
Hey, Matt McMahon, that I work with Ben, he wishes he could be here today, but with that. I think it's probably, Vice Chair, to your point, if I heard you correctly, it's probably because the state of Vermont is such a large employer.
Yeah.
That they're listed kind of in the top 3,
Mhm.
but I'm happy to connect with you.
Yeah.
Online, see what we can get.
Okay,
I mean, I was just gonna say, yeah, I mean, I find myself conflicted around these as well, because if they're serving a purpose for people who are really in a bind and they need that, and it is their money in theory. But, you know, I'm also always really aware that there are a lot of people that they're putting all of their bills on their credit card, digging in really deep holes too. So, you know, just because of product, you know, there are potential pitfalls, and I feel like we need to consider also the kind of consumer protections. Do we make it super easy for someone to make a bad choice?
but on the reverse of that, does this help those people that are putting money on their credit cards? Instead of getting that advance and paying it back when they next pay it. So there's a lot of different scenarios we can come to. I'm gonna wrap it up now because we have a hard stop at 2:30. We've got H34 that want to see if we're ready to vote out. So committee, just keep thinking about this over the weekend. We will be hearing from others on Tuesday. We'll be hearing from Vermont bankers. We'll also be hearing from AARP and others. So I think, you know, we'll hear more. And then I think we'll have some more discussion to decide which way we want to go.
Views from the AG on this?
We can, I don't know if it's really on the radar, but we can.
Okay.
We can also,
Yeah.
I sent it over to them so they could take a
yeah,
look.
you can follow up to see if Todd.
It's Lisa Jensen.
who the-
Lisa Jensen.
Okay. We can invite them to come over too. Yeah. Okay. Great. So Aaron, thank you.
Thank you all.
We'll see you next week, talking about Bitcoin kiosk.
Oh, my other favorite topic. For you.
You didn't just put them both in the same category, did you? Just want to
sorry.
make sure you didn't just put these both in the same.
I just said it was my other favorite topic.
I've seen more, that's it.
Okay. Hey, Chris?
Yeah.
We're gonna be up in 47 and 2.
47. Okay.
Rick's there.
All right.
You're good. And rolling. Rolling, can you check? Commissioner, to see if either wage access companies that are in the state are on his radar at all as far as labor practices and,
Yeah, financial check.
okay. Okay, so we're on H34. I think we heard, we had discussions a couple days ago about some thoughts that the chamber had, some thoughts that Advanced Vermont had. The language that the chamber presented was good language. It just wasn't the right context of what we were trying to do. And I think with Advanced Vermont, I think we're okay with the language that we had. So I haven't seen where we need to change any language in bill, unless somebody else has a different take on it. And
Motion? Is that how this works?
so is there any more discussion on the bill? I would entertain a motion to report favorably on H34 as drafted.
If I make the motion, does that mean I have to do it on the floor? Okay, I make a motion to do what?
Report
Report favorable
On
H34.
H34, that's my motion.
I'll second.
So seconder that has to report.
Been, okay. Been motion by Representative Booton, second by Representative Nicholas. Is there any further discussion? If not, clerk can call the roll.
So this is our first one. So I'm gonna call all your names and you just say yes or no. In alphabetical order. So Representative Bosch,
Yes.
Representative Booton,
Yes.
Representative Karis Duncan,
Yes.
Representative Cooper,
Yes.
Representative Duke,
Yes.
Representative Mickless,
Yes.
Representative Olson,
Yes.
Representative Priestley, yes. Representative White,
Yes.
Representative Granning,
Yes.
Representative Markup.
Yes.
Cool.
Just so you know, this is the record of action. We've had some discussions amongst the chairs with the speaker. And this, I think, came from training that we had, but we are going to post the record of action, which is, it's like the roll call vote that we do on the floor, where that's recorded and that's in the journal. We will put this on our webpage as well, so the public will know how each of us vote. And if we didn't vote. Just so you know.
I have some explaining to do.
Rick, what draft number is it?
That's introduced.
Okay.
There's no.
Oh, okay, because it's.
So this is your big job as clerk? Is this your big job as clerk?
Yeah, I don't know that we've had that ever. I've never.
Worked at it for 4 years before that's gonna happen.
7 months.
The 7 months.
It'll be next. Yeah, we do that.
Who's reporting?
Oh, my gosh.
Wait, no.
Everything that he really wants to do.
Anybody want to do it? Want to volunteer? Board it? Go ahead. Everybody turns away.
What is it? Not this one, but maybe another.
I can.
Yeah, he should demo, yeah.
Other people can do the future one. Yeah, zero interest in doing more than one, so. I'm happy to do the first one.
Okay.
Is this your first bill? That you voted out? Because you were only here for 5 days.
Well, I did lots of roll calls on the floor.
Yeah.
And we
For
voted.
my
We voted it, yeah, we voted on the privacy bill.
Privacy, we did that crazy 1 a.m. bill. that we
5 of
did.
us. We have a third
Everyone
of
was
the
waiting
rest.
for it.
You're still right.
Yes.
They are watching. Yeah, remember, we're still on.
Oh, yeah.
TV. So I think that wraps us up for this week. Thank you, committee. Good job, a lot of work, and a lot more to come. So next week, we had at 9 to 10. Yeah.
Potentially Commissioner Knight.
Oh, yeah, so we're inviting Liquor and Lottery to come in and chat with us. But the treasurer, Ashlyn Doyon, is going to join us from the treasurer's office. And we also have Tanya Marshall who's the state archivist, to come in and talk to us about what she does, but also talk to us about, thank you, Rick.
You're welcome.
It's about, something that we did a few years ago during COVID. There was an issue with, being able to access land records. And then we kind of found out that they're all over the place, all over the state. So she did it. She's doing a report, and I think the report's done, so she'll give us some of that as well. We'll continue to talk about H-99 at 3:00. And, take some testimony, continue to talk. Then we get VHFA coming in again. Mara talking about off-site housing construction report, and we have the Lodging Association. I put the DFR bill in this morning, so that'll have a number. For Wednesday afternoon, we'll take that up and start taking testimony on that. And we got 3 Squares Vermont coming in on Thursday, and we have Aaron coming back in to talk about the current virtual currency kiosks. That report that he did, and then that'll determine where we kind of go with that one. And then we have ADS coming in, Agency of Digital Services. And then from 1 to 3, I think we're gonna have a joint hearing with General Housing, on the new housing bill. The administration's just submitted. There's a large piece on TIFs, but they're calling it Spark. So we'll look at that along with, we'll have some joint fiscal joining us as well. And we'll have Commissioner Goldstein and others. And then on Friday, our normal, I think 10 to 12 right now, 10 after the floor is kind of open. And I'm reserving that for 99. If we're going to continue that discussion, might see a new draft of that. So we'll TBA that. And then in the afternoon, we have ABC and Vermont Academy for Construction Excellence. And we have GBIC coming in, Greater Burlington Industrial Corporation. And the Associated General Contractors to wrap up the day. So things are going to start moving more quickly. We may not be taking so much testimony from outside groups. So we're anticipating some housing things, the TIF stuff, career tech centers, as the education stuff comes out. We'll be looking at a data bill, but it's on data brokers, I think. So that's another piece that we'll be working on. We have other things in the hopper that we'll be working with the Secretary of State's office on the corporations division. There's some cleanups that need to be done there. UCC, Carl Lissman has been working on it. Carl, and very interesting stuff.
UCC.
Yeah, Universal Commercial Code. So I advise everyone to bring toothpicks with you. It's something that.
Give me an extra Celsius.
Something we have to do, but it's very dry.
Oh.
It's a long bill. I think it's over 100 pages, but
Oh.
there's only small word changes here and there and a lot of stuff. The walkthrough is interesting, but. And then, of course, we have the DFR bill that we're working on as well. Keep working. There's some other amendments that are being drafted. That I'll see if the committee wants to put them in. So, but as we go along with, I mean, after we have 6 weeks to cross over, so that means, and I don't know if things are moving fast for you, but they're certainly moving fast for me as I look forward.
I'm blissfully ignorant.
What he's saying is we have a lot to do, so our days are gonna get long.
You'll be withdrawing from your committee time bank.
Well, maybe. I hope not. I mean, I really don't like.
I'm just kidding.
We don't, but there may be, as things start moving and the needs. So, you know, our biggest needs are housing. And the TIF thing is part of that. We're going to talk with some people this afternoon on an employer housing prospect that we may be able to do too, we don't know yet. And we have the budget also, it's one thing I forget. We're going to be asked by appropriations to really dig into the budget, so that's another thing that will occupy our time.